On a warm summer evening in July 2022, 15-year-old Susana Morales left her home in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and never returned. For months, her family searched, desperate for answers. Then, one winter morning, the truth emerged, one far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. The man accused of taking Susana's life was someone sworn to protect her, a police officer. But was this a tragic failure, or part of something deeper? Tonight, we uncover the chilling truth behind the murder of Susana Morales, and the fight for justice that followed. This is the story of Susana Morales, a name the world must never forget.
Before tragedy struck, Susana Morales was just a normal teenage girl. She was full of life, energy, and dreams. She had a big, loving family and many friends. Those who knew her described her as kind, funny, and full of love. She always had a bright smile and a warm heart. Susana was born and raised in Gwinnett County, Georgia, a diverse and growing area just northeast of Atlanta. Her parents had worked hard to build a life for their children, making sure they had everything they needed to succeed. Family meant everything to Susana. She had siblings who loved her deeply, and her parents worked hard to provide for their children. They had strong values, respect, love, and looking out for one another. In their home, family dinners were important and birthdays were always celebrated. Her parents described her as helpful and responsible. She wasn't the type of teenager to run away or disappear without telling anyone. That's why, when she went missing, her family knew something was very wrong. Like many 16-year-olds, Susana had dreams for the future. She was a student at Meadow Creek High School, where she was well-liked by her classmates and teachers. She was smart and determined, and she wanted to go to college one day to make her family proud. She loved music and social media, just like any other teen. She enjoyed hanging out with her friends and laughing over funny videos. She had plans for her life, plans that were cruelly taken away from her. Susana was part of a tight-knit Hispanic community in Gwinnett County. Many people knew each other, and families supported one another. The community was shocked and heartbroken when she went missing. They helped search for her, prayed for her return, and later fought for justice alongside her family. Her story touched the hearts of many, not just in her community but across the country. People followed the case closely, hoping for justice. But before all of that, Susana was just a girl with a bright future ahead of her. A future that should have been filled with happiness, success, and endless possibilities. July 26, 2022 started like any other summer evening for 16-year-old Susana Morales. She was at home in Norcross, Georgia, spending time with her family. The sun had set and the night was warm. Like many teenagers, Susana liked to stay in touch with her friends. That evening, she told her family she was going to visit a friend nearby. Susana lived in a neighborhood where people knew each other. It was a place where kids walked around without much worry. She felt safe, and her family wasn't too concerned when she stepped outside. But they never could have imagined that this would be the last time they saw her alive. Susana left her home on foot. She sent messages to her friend, letting them know she was on her way. She also stayed in contact with her family through text messages. At 9:40 p.m., her phone sent its last location signal near Singleton Road, a busy area with homes, businesses, and wooded land. Then she stopped responding. When her family tried to call her later that night, she didn't answer. This was unusual. Susana always checked in. She wasn't the type to disappear without telling someone. Her parents grew worried. They sent more messages. They made more calls. No response. By midnight, fear set in. Something was wrong. When the sun rose on July 27, 2022, Susana's family realized she never came home. They searched the house, hoping she had returned while they were asleep. But her room was empty. Her parents called her phone again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. They checked her social media for any updates, nothing. They asked friends if they had seen her, but no one knew where she was. Susana's mother felt sick with worry. She knew her daughter wouldn't just vanish. Something terrible had happened. Without wasting any more time, the family called the police. When the Gwinnett County Police Department arrived, they asked the usual questions. When was the last time anyone saw Susana? Was she having problems at home? Did she have a reason to run away? Her family was firm. Susana did not run away. She had no reason to leave without telling them. Something had happened to her, and they needed help finding her immediately. The police checked her last phone location and started looking around Singleton Road. But there were no clear signs of what had happened to her. Word spread quickly that Susana was missing. Friends, family, and neighbors joined the search. People put up flyers and shared her picture on social media. Everyone wanted to find her. But as hours turned into days, hope started to fade. Susana was gone and no one knew why. When Susana Morales didn't come home on the night of July 26, 2022, her family's world turned upside down. They knew something was wrong. She wasn't the type of girl to run away, and she always let them know where she was. The Gwinnett County Police Department, GCPD, started investigating, but at first, there were few leads. The only clue was Susana's last known phone location near Singleton Road around 9:40 p.m. After that, her phone stopped working. Her family refused to wait. They began searching for her on their own, hoping someone had seen her. Susana's disappearance spread quickly through her community. Friends and neighbors joined the search, walking through streets and wooded areas near where she was last seen. Her family made flyers with her picture, placing them in local stores, gas stations, and bus stops. They also turned to social media, posting messages asking if anyone had seen Susana. The posts were shared hundreds of times, reaching people all over Gwinnett County. Her parents called hospitals, police stations, and shelters, hoping she had been found safe somewhere. But there was no sign of her. As days turned into weeks, Susana's family became frustrated. They felt like police weren't moving fast enough. They feared that too much time was passing and that important evidence could be lost. At first, police treated the case as a possible runaway. Many teenagers leave home for a few days and return. But Susana's family knew better. She left without extra clothes, money, or a plan. She had never run away before. She had no history of problems at home. By the time police started taking the case more seriously, weeks had already passed. Even as time passed, Susana's family refused to give up. They continued to organize search parties and hold candlelight vigils to keep her story in the public eye. Her parents went on the news, begging for answers. They pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. But the days turned into months and the search grew cold. For 6 long months, Susana's family lived with fear and uncertainty. They didn't know if she was alive, if she was being held somewhere, or if she would ever come home. Then, on February 6, 2023, police received a chilling call. A pedestrian walking through a wooded area near Decula, Georgia, had found human remains. When police arrived at the scene, they knew they had found Susana. Her family's worst fears had come true. Susana Morales was never coming home. For 6 long months, Susana Morales' family held on to hope. They searched, prayed, and begged for answers. But as time passed, the chances of finding her alive grew smaller. Then, on February 6, 2023, everything changed. That day, a pedestrian was walking along Drowning Creek Road in Decula, Georgia, about 20 miles from where Susana was last seen. It was a quiet, wooded area, far from homes and businesses. As the person walked through the brush, they noticed something strange. At first, it wasn't clear what it was. But as they got closer, a chilling realization set in: they had found human remains. The person immediately called 911. Police rushed to the scene and began their investigation. The Gwinnett County Police examined the remains. Because Susana had been missing for so long, the body was in an advanced stage of decomposition. However, investigators found clues that helped identify her quickly. Personal items near the body. Clothing that matched what she was last seen wearing. A forensic examination confirmed it was Susana. On February 7, 2023, police made the heartbreaking announcement: the remains belonged to Susana Morales. Her family, who had held onto hope for so long, was now faced with the worst possible news. How did she get there? The location where Susana's body was found raised many questions. It was far from her home. She had no reason to be in that area. It was a secluded, wooded place, suggesting that someone deliberately dumped her body there. Police believed she had been killed shortly after disappearing and her body had been left there for months. Now, investigators had a murder case on their hands. The question was, who did this to Susana? The news of Susana's death shocked and devastated her family, friends, and the entire Gwinnett County community. Her parents were heartbroken, struggling to accept that their daughter was gone. Friends and neighbors mourned her loss, holding vigils in her memory. The Latino community in Gwinnett County, where Susana was well known, demanded justice. No one understood how something like this could have happened. Who would hurt a sweet, innocent girl? The answer was more disturbing than anyone expected. In just a few days, police would make a shocking arrest. A police officer was responsible for Susana's death. For months, Susana Morales' disappearance had been a mystery. Her family had searched tirelessly, police had investigated, and the community had demanded answers. But it wasn't until her body was found in February 2023 that investigators finally had a breakthrough. A few days later, police made a shocking announcement. The suspect was a police officer. The man accused of being involved in Susana's disappearance and death was Miles Bryant, a 22-year-old Doraville police officer. Bryant wasn't just any suspect, he was someone who had sworn to protect and serve. But beneath his uniform, investigators discovered a dark and troubling past. Bryant lived near Susana's neighborhood and worked as a security officer at an apartment complex nearby. This meant that he was familiar with the area where Susana was last seen. But why would a police officer commit such a crime? As investigators dug deeper into Bryant's past, red flags began to emerge. He had a history of stalking women. A former friend had accused him of breaking into her home and stealing her underwear, but nothing was done at the time. He abused his power as an officer. Even though he was supposed to protect the community, there were signs that he was using his position to intimidate others. He lied to police. After Susana's disappearance, Bryant initially denied knowing anything about the case. However, investigators later found evidence linking him to her death. On February 13, 2023, 1 week after Susana's body was found, Miles Bryant was arrested. At first, he was charged with concealing a death and false reporting. But as police continued their investigation, more evidence came to light. His charges were upgraded to felony murder and kidnapping. Susana's family and the community were stunned and outraged. How had a police officer, someone who was supposed to keep people safe, been able to get away with such disturbing behavior for so long? The arrest of Miles Bryant sent shockwaves through Gwinnett County and beyond. Susana's family demanded justice, calling for the harshest punishment possible. The community was furious, questioning how Bryant had ever been allowed to wear a badge. The police department faced criticism, with many asking, did they ignore warning signs? Could Susana's death have been prevented? With Bryant in custody, the legal battle for justice for Susana Morales was just beginning. The arrest of Miles Bryant was a major turning point in Susana Morales' case. But for her family, the fight was far from over. Now, they wanted to make sure that the man accused of taking their daughter's life faced the full weight of the law. At first, Miles Bryant was only charged with false reporting and concealing a death. But as investigators dug deeper, they found more evidence linking him to Susana's murder. His charges were soon upgraded to felony murder, causing someone's death while committing another serious crime; kidnapping, forcing Susana to go somewhere against her will; attempted rape, evidence suggested Bryant had tried to sexually assault Susana before killing her. These were serious charges, and if convicted, Bryant faced life in prison or even the death penalty. Prosecutors built their case using strong evidence, including cell phone records. These placed Bryant near the area where Susana disappeared. Surveillance footage, cameras showed his car in suspicious locations at key times. Forensic evidence, investigators found DNA and other evidence connecting Bryant to the crime. Perhaps the most chilling part of the case was how calm and normal Bryant acted in the months after Susana's murder. He continued working as a police officer as if nothing had happened. As the trial date approached, both sides prepared for a long legal fight. Prosecutors argued that Bryant had used his position as a police officer to commit a violent crime and then tried to cover it up. Bryant's defense team claimed there was no clear evidence that he had intended to kill Susana. They tried to argue that her death was not premeditated. But for Susana's family and the community, there was no doubt he was guilty and he needed to pay for what he had done. After a high-profile trial, the jury reached a decision. Miles Bryant was found guilty on all major charges. At his sentencing hearing, the judge delivered a strong message. Because of the horrific nature of his crimes, Bryant received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. For Susana's family, it was a moment of justice, but not closure. Nothing could bring their daughter back, but at least the man responsible for her death would never hurt anyone again. With the trial over, Susana's family could finally begin the process of healing. But their fight wasn't just about their daughter. They wanted to make sure this never happened to another child again. They knew that real justice meant changing the system, so they began their next battle, pushing for reforms to protect other young girls from predators like Miles Bryant. For Susana Morales' family, seeing Miles Bryant convicted was an important step. But their fight for justice wasn't over. They believed that Bryant wasn't the only one responsible for what happened to Susana. They wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted change. One of the first legal actions Susana's family took was filing a lawsuit against the apartment complex where Bryant worked as a security officer. The family and their lawyers argued that Bryant had a history of disturbing behavior. The apartment complex should have done a better background check before hiring him. They failed to monitor him properly. Even though he was supposed to provide security, there were reports that he misused his position and made people feel unsafe. They could have prevented this crime. If Bryant hadn't been working in the area, he might never have come into contact with Susana. The family also questioned why Miles Bryant was ever allowed to be a police officer in the first place. Did the Doraville Police Department ignore warning signs? Had Bryant's past behavior been overlooked? Were there other victims who had been too scared to come forward? Their concerns weren't just about Susana's case. They feared that there could be other officers like Bryant, officers who abused their power and weren't being properly checked or disciplined. Susana's death sparked anger and activism across Gwinnett County. Community leaders, activists, and residents began demanding better police hiring standards. People wanted stronger background checks to make sure officers weren't dangerous. More accountability for law enforcement. If an officer committed a crime, they shouldn't be protected just because they wore a badge. The community wanted programs that would help prevent other girls from falling victim to predators like Bryant. Susana's family joined protests, gave speeches, and worked with lawyers and politicians to push for new laws. They didn't want Susana to be remembered only as a victim. They wanted her story to inspire real change. Even with all their efforts, nothing could take away the pain of losing Susana. Her mother often spoke about how hard it was to wake up each day without her daughter's smile. Her father said that he couldn't stop thinking about what Susana's future could have been. Graduating high school, going to college, starting a family. But through their grief, they kept fighting. Because for them, justice wasn't just about punishing Miles Bryant. It was about making sure no other family went through the same heartbreak they did.